Okay, welcome everybody. My name's Carl Larson from RM Consulting Group. I'm joined by my colleague Anna Carew, and today we'll be going through the I-GRO Diversification Guide with this cohort of service providers. Now, if you have joined us today, you will have been involved at some point over the last 18 months um, in the development of that particular document, either through providing feedback or providing comment and input throughout the way. So we really appreciate that. And thank you for your input. Today is officially firing the starting gun. And there's a couple of things that we wanted to do. So at the end of today's session, we really wanted to make sure that the purpose and drivers for the I-GRO project were really clear. And the two things to walk away with are firstly, an understanding of what the guide actually is, what it looks like, its components, and then the second is actually how to use it with your wine grape grower clients. Okay, so before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're joining on and acknowledge their elders past, present, and emerging. So, firstly, the purpose of the diversification guide itself. This is for inland wine grape growers and ultimately ending in a farm diversification plan that's developed with you, their trusted service provider. I-GRO stands for Inland Grower Revenue Options, and the guide is made up of two key components. Firstly, the discussion tool, which is for service providers. It's much more lengthy and detailed and thorough. And the second component is the I-GRO Grower Workbook, which is for the wine grape growers themselves and working in conjunction with you as their service providers along the process. And very modular, it can be entered at any point throughout their journey as well. So, where did this come from? We know that the wine industry at the moment is really challenging, both economically, but also some environmental headwinds there, particularly around the several years of low returns and cash flow pressure, some of the reduced demands and shift in global wine markets, as well as some of those increasing seasonal changes that we've seen over the last couple of vintages. This work was funded by the Australian Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries in response to the viticulture and wine sector working group's recommendations back in 2024. The I-GRO project supports diversification decision making for wine grape growers who want to actually continue farming. So this guide is being launched today, commencing with today's webinar for service providers, and will be launched later this afternoon. In terms of who's been involved along the 18-month journey, we had an expert project advisory group comprised of the research and development corporations, CCW Co-op, a couple of universities, the regional warm inland growing associations, as well as some agtech innovators as well. We consulted with over 120 stakeholders across the Riverland, Riverina and Murray Valley over the 18-month period, and more than 30 of you as service providers were involved in the testing and piloting of the guide itself. So the end product, the farm diversification plan that I mentioned before, we know diversification takes time, and you as service providers play a really important role in that journey. So the service provider, be that an extension professional, a rural financial counsellor, an accountant, or someone else that the grower really trusts and is in that inner circle, guides the grower through a conversation and a process, and really helps to both identify and analyze multiple options rather than leading with the option from the get-go. The grower completes some of those modules that I mentioned before in the workbook, which includes the templates and checklists, and that ultimately leads to the farm diversification plan itself. So which growers will actually be using the I-GRO Diversification Guide? This is very much centered around growers that want to continue farming, and that could be in one of three different ways. They either want to continue growing wine grapes and look at value-added opportunities. They may want to grow crops other than wine grapes, or move out of horticulture altogether and explore some non-crop revenue options, and that could be carbon or nature-based markets, just as an example. Now, while the focus isn't on exiting industry, there is some further information provided to growers if they wish to exit, as well as some pointers to extra support for those people in that situation. So why work with a service provider? We know that conversations with a trusted person is really important for general business decision making and day-to-day operation of their business, including diversification, which is just one component of farm business management. That support from service providers can be in various forms. It can include technical advice, but also just encouragement and accountability along the way. And as I mentioned before, really important that just more than one option is actually considered in the process. You as service providers can help through crunching the numbers, support sensitivity testing along the way, and stress testing some of those ideas and the process too. The aim really being that a practical plan is developed to take the farm from where it is now in its current state to where the grower wants it to be in its potential future state, and its transition along the way, noting that it won't happen overnight. So that's a little snapshot of the purpose and what the diversification guide is. I'd now like to hand to Anna Carew to take us through how to use the guide. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, Carl, and hello everybody. And it's really great to see so many people here. Particularly, I'd love to add my thanks to Carl's thanks to the service providers we can see in the room here who've put so much into testing this and helping us to develop it over the 18 months we've been working on the project. So my job in this next 15 minutes is to do two things to make sure that you're really clear about the structure of the two resources that make up the guide. And also that by the end of it, you're reasonably confident about how you would start using this guide, so how to use it. What you can see here is an overview guide on a page, and the two documents, the two resources, the discussion tool and the grower workbook, both follow exactly this same structure. 5 parts. My future, which is focused on what is it that the grower aspires to get out of their farming life in the coming 5 to 10 years. My situation, which is really about understanding deeply what is it that the current farm offers and what situation is the grower in. You can see over there on the right-hand side that there's some ideas about the typical time frame that you might need to use to work with the grower to do a good job of these. And I'm going to go into these 5 components in a lot more detail in a moment. I just want to give you the global picture. Section 3, my options. So that's really about looking at all the different things that the grower might consider, keeping an open mind, and then starting to crunch those down with some good analysis to work out what's the best option for the grower. My plan is the who does what when to get us from where the farm is now to where it needs to be more viable and resilient. And then my final check is the stress test, where we make sure that we've got a good plan before we put the spade in the ground. So the next part, I'm just going to show you what the discussion tool looks like and then what the grower workbook looks like, so it's familiar to you. The discussion tool is, in fact, the thing you'll be using. It's pretty chunky. It's a decent sized document. It has very thorough information in it. And we did try very hard when we were working with service providers to pilot this to see if we could strip out some of the information, but we got a really strong message that they would really prefer to have all of that information there and pick and mix the bits that are going to be most relevant to the wine grape grower they have in front of them at that particular time. So it's thorough. We've been really particular about navigation. You can see in the page that says Grower's Future, there are tabs down the side there. So you can click on those tabs. You will always be able to find where you are in the document and click yourself back to where you need to be. And there are very clear signposts between this document, the discussion tool for service providers, and the grower workbook that your grower will be using to respond to all of their tasks. I'll talk a bit more about this in a moment, but you can enter at any point. Obviously, it'd be great if you start at the beginning, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The grower workbook looks like this. It's a leaner document. It has fewer words. We really only put text into this where it was really important that a grower understood what it was that they were doing and why they were doing it in a particular section of this document. It has a lot of templates. It has checklists and questions. So this can be used as a hard copy. The grower can print it out and get, coffee stains on it and scribble all over it and mark it up, or they can use it on their computer if they would like to. It's a fillable PDF that they can download from the website. With the grower workbook, you can also choose to break it up into modules if the grower you're working with seems really overwhelmed or likely to jump all over the place and get distracted by some of the other tasks and focus points. Then you can give it to them as one of 5 chunks of modules over the time that you're working with them. So, Carl, what's next? All right, one of the questions that we got, which is very, very legitimate, is, so do I have to start at page 1 with every grower and work my way through to the end? And the answer is absolutely not. With this picture, which is in your discussion tool, says to you that it's really important that you start where the grower is. So, for example, if you're sitting with a grower who's overwhelmed and financially stressed, really, really panicking about this situation, you may be best to start at the second section, My Situation, to sort of put out the bin fires and get a clear sense of where they are before you might take them back to, for example, thinking about what they want their future to look like. What you can see here is a cycle that says you work through all of these bits and you get to the farm diversification plan. But I know many of you know this very well, that farm diversification planning isn't quick and it's not linear. It's often iterative and you'll be going backwards and forwards. But the end point is to get that farm diversification plan that's strong and nailed down. The logic of this diversification guide is not about telling the growers what to grow or put in, definitely not. It's about helping service providers to ask the right set of questions for the grower to clarify, what they need to clarify to come up with a future plan at the right time. All right, I'm just going to go through the 5 sections. I've got 1 slide for each section. Now, obviously, there's a lot in this guide, so when we give you the website link, it'd be absolutely terrific if you jump in and have a look and take yourself through the sections, learn how to navigate. The fundamental question that chapter 1 asks of the grower is, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? This is a really simple question, but the feedback we get, and from the service providers we worked with during this project, and certainly during RMCG's 30-odd years of agribusiness coaching and support, is that it's deeply important. In the grower workbook, this question is unpacked. You can see the template on the right-hand side of the slide. It's unpacked in detail. We really encourage you to dig in at the kitchen table with your wine grape grower to get them to describe in detail what it is that they want their life and their work and their farm to be like in 5 to 10 years' time. Partly it gets their eyes up off the focus on the difficult situation many of them find themselves in. There's a potential for hope, but also it comes in later on when we're coming up with a diversification plan, because we do need to have something that aligns very clearly with these future aspirations. Important not to lose sight of them. This section also has some answers to some really important questions that come up at some point during the process, so we thought we'd give them to you straight away. So there's information about why a grower might consider diversification, why it's really important for them to work over time with a service provider. What if they want to exit? As Carl mentioned, there's information about exit. It's not the point of I-GRO, but it might come up. And if it does, then there's some information in there about how to refer out. And what if I want to keep growing wine grapes? Well, the answer to that one is in there as well. Absolutely. If that is a good business decision, that can be encompassed well and truly within the I-GRO process. The second part of the discussion tool and the grower workbook is getting really clear about what the grower's current farm situation is. The information in your pack is actually relatively lean. There's really intelligent, good, deep questions to ask about farm capacity. There's a bit of information about financial position, and then there's some information about water access, how to start or how to support the grower to unpick these. The grower situation section of the grower workbook is actually quite substantial. There are about 5 pages of these templates. And certainly the feedback that we've had from service providers and growers as we've piloted this is that the growers don't need to fill in every single box. But by the time they get to the end of those 5 pages, they should have a really clear idea of the founding point or the foundation upon which they're going to try and build their diversified business. So growers option is a substantial portion, and I have to tell you that it is the bit that everybody wants to flip through and get to. In the discussion tool, that's your document, there are a list of 77 different revenue ideas with regional potential. We were really particular not to put that into the grower workbook, because what we heard again and again was that when a grower's under a lot of pressure, they have a knee jerk to say, that's it, I'm just going to pull everything out and put in citrus. I've seen it in the book. I'm not going to think about it. Bob down the road's doing all right. So your job at this point is really to hold them back from that. So the revenue options are ideas. They are potentially hopeful. They might be the right option for the grower, but you won't know until you have supported them through the process of analysing their options. So this section is all about saying lots of things you could do. Let's pull it in and analyse it until we end up with something or several options, one would hope, 2 or 3 options maybe. Can you grow it? Can you sell it? Can you get it to market? Does it fit with your future goals? How soon is it likely to make money? So there's a lot of information in there about market analysis, pathways to market. So once you get outside the farm, what are the constraints and pinch points that are going to trip you over? By the end of this process, by the end of this chapter, the grower should have 2, 3 really good options that actually do fit where they're heading and that are likely to be viable within their business setup and their aspirations. Chapter 4 is the basically the grower's plan. This is where the grower and you map out, how do I get from where I am now over the period of 3 to 5 or however long years it's going to take to restructure the business, to put in place all of the new crops or revenue options, to get them up and running and to be in a viable business position again. So this plan on a page, really it feeds off all of the work that you'll have done with the grower in the preceding sections, and there's some bits in this section as well that they need to do in order to be able to click them in. One of the things that, Carl, do you want to, just wondering where my lovely quote is. I got to sit with wine grape growers and service providers while we were piloting this, and sit quietly in the corner, fly on the wall, and listen while they found their way through the discussion tool and the grower workbook. And I guess this particular quote comes from a wine grape grower in the Riverland who the 2 of them had been sort of, getting their way through the guide and making sense of it. And then suddenly, after about 10 minutes, the grower said, oh, it's like a jigsaw. All the pieces come together in this plan on a page at the end. So the point being that all the work that you've done with the wine grape grower in the month or 2 preceding the planning, month or 3 preceding the planning, clicks together into the diversification plan or the pathway to a new farm business. In this section also, there is a fairly substantial optional template called Building a Business Case. It is fairly extensive. We didn't want to put it into the grower workbook because it's a bit intimidating, but as service providers, when your grower gets to the point where they need to think about potentially applying for funding, for lending, they will really benefit from your support to build the business case using this template. We got some really high quality feedback and input from some of the people in this room. Thank you very much. I hope you know who you are. And then also went to some of the agribusiness lenders across these three regions to check it with them. And certainly they were saying that if they saw about 70% of the business case filled in, they'd be confident the grower knew what they were doing and that the argument they were putting forward was well thought through. They may or may not lend. That would mean basically that it wasn't a very good business idea rather than that they didn't understand what they were being asked to fund. So nobody gets to go to the nursery and buy 1,000 plants before they get through the last stage, which is chapter 5. This is the final check. So it's really important to do sensitivity testing on the plan. It's really important to take it out to others. Potentially, if you haven't taken the grower, encourage the grower to see an accountant or a specialist agronomist if they're thinking about a new crop, or to go and talk with the association for the new crop, then this is the time to do it. We're really encouraging you to do this part because this is where we see whether the plan can endure some of the stresses that are likely to hit any farm businesses. It's reorganising itself and getting into a new revenue stream. There's lots and lots of information here about additional support. We have peppered both of the guides with information and direction out to mental health support because that's a very important part of this process. And again, I'm just going to reiterate that there's the business case template in section 4. That's another really good final check because if somebody else won't put their hand in their pocket and put money on the table for this proposed new diversified farm business, then there's some questions that need to be answered about whether it's a good idea to proceed. Carl, I think that's all I have to say. I hope I haven't gone too quickly. There's a great deal in this guide and we're absolutely thrilled to have been doing this work and we're really looking forward to you getting your hands on it and getting out there and using it with growers.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks everyone for tuning in again. Now, a lot of content there, and some of you may be really familiar with the look and the layout, having been involved quite recently. Others, this might look quite different to earlier drafts. I think the important thing to note is that the discussion tool for service providers is one module with that business case template that Anna mentioned that's able to be extracted out and used separately. Whereas the grower workbook will be available in its entirety, but then also for each of those 5 components or modules that Anna's just walked through, or the coloured tabs on our screen. So depending on where that grower might start, rather than providing the whole grower workbook, it can just be passed through as modules, both for discussion with you, but then also to set about some thinking and working time outside of those particular meetings or touch points that you may have with them. Now, in terms of getting access to this particular guide, it is now live on the Wine Australia website. So there's a URL on the right-hand side of your screen there, wineaustralia.com/growing-making/diversification guide, or you can scan the QR code on your screen as well to take you to the relevant web page. We'll be launching the guide today, and everyone who's joined this webinar will receive a separate email with a link in their inbox to that web page as well. So if you've scanned on your phone and you've got it there, but you'd like it in perpetuity or to bookmark it, we will be providing that opportunity to you this afternoon as well. We'd just like to take a moment to say thank you again, both for your input today, but throughout the process. I think the more people that have been involved in this, particularly in each of the 3 warm inland regions, the better. The guide is a better and higher quality and more useful product as a result. If there are any other follow-up questions or comments after today, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Anna. We're more than happy to continue that conversation, particularly around what some of the ongoing support or other aspects might look like as well. But thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to hearing your stories around how the guide's used and keeping in touch. So thank you very much.